We can light the world up with a word. We can take a nothing day and brighten it up with a tale unheard. 'Cause we're learning and knowing and growing, with welcoming words overflowing, you know it. Come along with me, let's read together. Come along, let's see what's new together. Come join us in the welcome word. Come join us in the welcome word.
Good day. Welcome to Welcome Word, and we're so glad to have you today. I'm Mary, and I'm the librarian at Gethsemane Lutheran Church. This coming month, April, is National Poetry Month. Well, I seldom read poetry for, at least many years. And I didn't really begin reading it until 2 years ago. And the reason for that was because of the pandemic. The public libraries closed their doors. And of course, none of us were vaccinated. And I had all this time, and I had 3 poetry books in my home. So I thought, okay, I've got a little time and I'm going to explore. And I did find some ideas. And so today, our session will mostly talk about tools that you might want to use, and I invite you to use them to learn more about poetry. But there is a poetry book that I dare say most of you have in your home, and that's the Bible. The Bible is about a third of 33% of poetry. And of course, now you're most familiar with the poems in the New or Old Testament. We have the books of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. Some scholars also mention Lamentations. And in the New Testament is what I'd kind of like to dwell on a little bit, because you might not know exactly where to look for poetry. Poetry, I would look in Luke. Luke has the most poetry of all the Gospels. And there will also be some in the epistles and in James. But Luke is particularly very poetic. And please look for Mary's song, Zechariah's song, Simeon's song, and when John the Baptist comes and says, prepare the way for the way of the Lord, and you can read as he comes, and they're wonderful poems. So please, take out your Bible, take a look at it. You'll find it's marvelous. Now, the second tool I'm going to talk about is being playful. If you have young children around, you know how they love the sound of words that rhyme and are silly and have some kind of a beat to them and a rhythm. And maybe you can remember walking your child when they were up at night, singing lullabies. My grandsons still like to play This Piggy Went to Market. There are games involved. And there have been a lot more of wonderful music that you can find. Cuckoo Kangaroo, Casper, there is Laura Berkner's band, just all kinds of wonderful artists that the children love. And they particularly are into, as you know, the songs like Frozen and Encanto. And they love those songs, and they're all poetry. I'm just going to share a couple of the new poetry books I have for the littler ones. Amy Schwartz has written several books about 100 things. 100 things that make me happy, 100 things I can do, 100 things I want to be when I grow up. And I got this first one because I thought it was just so delightful. The pictures are beautiful, the rhymes are fun, and the children will love them. Red Sox building blocks, licking the spoon, the man on the moon, an orange hat, an orange cat. Fuzzy sweaters, long letters, slippery floors, dinosaurs, comfy chair, a county fair. And it just continues, and it's fun to read. Now, of course, I know that you're familiar with Dr. Seuss and how much I always love reading him, and the children always love it too. We have several beautiful books for children. This is about the Psalms. These books are actually poems, but they're a complete poem in the book. We have the Good Morning book, where you can play with the piggies and the toes. On Morning Wings, Cold Little Duck, 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 and many, many beautiful books. And you won't find it difficult to find poetry books for children, because they just love the sense of the rhythm and the joy, and you will love it too. So my second tool is become playful. The third tool is I have bought a few new books, like poetry books for our Gethsemane Library for adults. And you will know some of these authors you will be familiar with, and some will be new. Actually, I just got this one 2 days ago, and I haven't had a chance even to enter it into the library system. But he's a very famous poet. His name is Serhiy Zhadan. He's from Ukraine, and he is the most famous poet in Ukraine, and these are selected poems from him, and they're wonderful. The name of the book is What We Live For, What We Die For. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. We have compilations, How to Love the World, The Best of Jane Kenyon. You might know Wendell Berry. He's also a novelist. He has Sabbath Day poems, and he was also a preacher. And during on the Sabbath morning, he would walk around his country estate, and he would write poems. So these are some of his poems, and they're all dated, and they're all called Sabbath Day poems. Garrison Keillor, Writer's Almanac. Of course, we can't forget Amanda Gordon. Compilation from Joy Harshaw. And even adults have one book that just is a poem. So that third tool would be take a look at our library and peruse some of our new poetry books. The fourth tool I have for you is called the Poetry Foundation. The Poetry Foundation is in Chicago, and its mission is to discover and celebrate the best of poetry, and then be able to give it into the hands of as many people as possible. It is a nonprofit, and you can go to, and there will be a link on this, to www.poetryfoundation.org. And just peruse. They have got all kinds of beautiful collections of poems. I subscribe to the poem of the day, so that each day I get a poem in my inbox that I can read. Some of those poems may talk to me, some may not, but you'll discover lots of good poetry. And poetry is very personal and intricate. And what speaks to you may not speak to me, and vice versa. So that's why I'm kind of giving you these tools to look for. Another tool I have that will be on a link is Frederick Putman. He is a professor of Hebrew poetry and English poetry. And he has about an 8 to 10 minute video on how to read a poem. and he is wonderful. He says read it in many times over and over and over again, and then start to get playful just like you would with a small child. Read it in a different kind of voice. In fact, Ecclesiastes was even kind of fun to read. So, things to the wind and so on, and gestures. And of course, I live alone, so I can just belt it out, and no one is going to say too much or raise their eyebrows at me. But he is great. I would certainly encourage you to listen to him. And now the next thing I'd like to talk about is I just have a little kind of special treat. I could just not let go of not being able to get the Dead Poets Society for our library. I know many of you have seen this film. It won a Oscar nomination, an Oscar for the best film and actor, Robin Williams. But it speaks to the delight of poetry and how these boys in the school are they don't care for poetry, it's dull for them, and then comes Robin Williams, and from then on, things are not dull any longer. However, here's a caveat, it is a tearjerker. Now, another thing, another tool that you might use is your Sunday Bulletin. My Sunday Bulletin is filled with prayers, songs, things that I can use. And speaking of music, you will find no more beautiful poetry than in music. Music of whatever kind you like. When I take my bulletin home, I'll go through it and I'll look at it. And you know how sometimes it's difficult to think of what to pray for? Well, sometimes all you need to do is read the hymn, read the poem, read the gospel. The kinds of things that are in here are wonderful. And of course, some of you may have a hymnal at home, which you can enjoy. But I do want to talk about one more possible tool that you might want to use. Some of you may have heard of Gary Gilson. Gary Gilson teaches creative writing and also how to write in a way that people understand. And it was about 2-3 weeks ago, there was an article in the paper about him and how he gets together with his friends virtually and listens to lyrics of songs. And their favorite songs are from the 1930s and 1940s. Oscar and Hammerstein, Gershwin, Glenn Miller. And if you listen to the lyrics, and then you can simplify your writing that way. And if you're like me, I can get a little bit wordy in my writing. So this is a good tool for me. And I found Judy Garland's Somewhere Over the Rainbow from the movie Wizard of Oz. And so that is a link for you. And listen to the beautiful lyrics in that song. Sing along with her. And to know that a sad life that she lived, you can even understand more about how that song means something to her. So music is great. Music makes you dance, it makes you laugh, it makes you play. It has lyrics that touch your heart. And even if you discover that you want to go into the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, hey, you might end up having a sing-along with yourself. At least I did. So I'd like to invite you to try to discover poetry. Discover poetry through books, through websites, through music, through children, and through just every part of your life. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.